Hey everyone, welcome to Crushing Classical, redefining a thriving classical music career. I'm Tracy Friedlander, and today I have Christopher Rountree on the show. Christopher is a conductor, composer, and founder of the LA-based ensemble Wild Up. Since Christopher founded this group, I wanted him on the show to get to the bottom of how he started his ensemble. I wanted to know some of those nitty-gritty details, money, the nonprofit dilemma, etc. But what I got was so much more. Christopher has a clear philosophy and certainty on not only the type of career that works for him, which is super important for everyone to hear, but also how you can figure that out for yourself. He is also very clear on what kind of energy and vibe he wants to exist and show through his ensemble, both in the performances and in the day-to-day work. He shares exactly how Wild Up started and exactly what he learned, with stories and advice for everyone wanting to create their own career along the way. Before we get started, I'd like to thank Fix Music for being a sponsor of Crushing Classical Podcast. FixMusic.com is your online resource for high-quality sheet music at great prices. Check out their latest offerings like hard-to-get music and frequently backordered parts. Fix also offers unique solutions for teachers and schools buying music. Whether you have a large private teaching studio or you run a music program, Fix has a solution for you. Contact them through their website for more information. Fix now offers free shipping on all domestic orders. Remember to use the special discount link in the show notes and get 10% off your order. And Drone Tuner, an incredibly revolutionary tuner app, is now available in the Apple App Store. You may be thinking, another tuner app? Why do I need this one? Well, let me tell you why. Do you tune with a drone or constant tone coming out of your tuner? Are you tired of that nasty mechanical sound? This app has samples of recorded live musicians for your drone work. It is such a pleasure to tune to that sound that is exactly your instrument. Not only that, the visuals on this app are super fast and the reaction time is like no other tuner app on the market. You can tune intervals and chords within a key so you know if your major thirds are too sharp or just right. You can tune using vibrato if you play with vibrato, and you can even tune a chord with a friend. People are already in love with this app. Some of the things people are saying about Drone Tuner, best app ever. I have never felt more comfortable playing in ensembles after using this app for just a few weeks. And I used the Drone Tuner to tune my college orchestra this morning. Worked great with the iPad 4. Check out our website, dronetunerapp.com, to see video tutorials on how the app works, or check out the videos in the App Store. Drone Tuner is currently available for iPhone and iPad. Get yours today at the iTunes App Store. The link is in the show notes. Let's get started. Hey, Christopher, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Yeah, happy to.
So you're a conductor, a composer, and also a founder of an ensemble called Wild Up. So I really want to hear all about everything that you're doing. We just had a great chat pre-pressing record, and sometimes I sort of wish, man, I should just press record as soon as I get people on so I can have the behind the scenes stuff. So maybe we can go into a little bit about what you're doing right now, which sounds so
Sure.
cool. But can you tell us what's Wild Up? What is it, first of all?
Sure. So Wild Up is a collection of soloists and friends. We were founded in 2010, and I just finished grad school at the University of Michigan, and I wasn't sure kind of what my future held, but I knew that I didn't want to take the kind of typical path for a conductor, which is what I'm trained in.
Mm-hmm.
And I moved back to Los Angeles, which is where I'm from, and I met, one person at a time, and I kind of thought, I think I have this idea for an ensemble, and or a series or something, and I wasn't sure which one it was. But then I started to meet people that I really wanted to make music with, and I got this idea that an ensemble could exist where all different types of music are presented next to one another, and they're all presented next to each other as totally equal.
Uh-huh.
And you can have a concert that looks like a classical music concert in terms of it looks like a chamber orchestra is sitting on stage. But what you're presenting is kind of like garage band minimalism and pop music and Baroque music and avant-garde kind of almost like performance art composition and 20th century music and kind of theater music, and all those would be under the same banner.
That sounds so cool.
Yeah, it was. It was. The idea wasn't so codified at the beginning,
Right.
and I just kind of threw some things on a concert, and they all looked good to me. And then, about a year into our programming, I had, which is only two concerts in, um, I, um, I had a friend come to me and say, you really program like John Philip Sousa. And I was like, there's no marches on this. What do you mean? Like, what?
Yeah.
When he said, well, Sousa's band, they toured around in a bus like a rock band,
Hmm.
right? They tour around the country.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, which is like they were like very popular. They were,
Oh.
like Beyonce level popular.
Get
It was
out. Like at first you're like, wait a second, what are you saying, John Philip Sousa? Like sousaphones? Like what are you because I don't
yeah,
know the
yeah,
history
yeah.
of Sousa.
But what he meant about the programming, so it's like all these model things that we've now taken, which is like working with pop musicians and living in the sphere that's not necessarily classical music all the time.
Hmm.
Um, but the programming wise, John Philip Sousa had pieces written by people that were in the ensemble. He had, which we have about a dozen composers in Wild Up, and we do a lot of their music. He had pieces that were classical music reimagined. Like there would do parts of operas, like Verdi, and they would arrange them for the band.
Oh
Which
wow. And did you just say you have about a dozen people who are composers that play in Wild
yes,
Up? Oh wow,
yes,
that's
there's a lot
great.
of people that are performers.
Okay.
Uh, And so we do, everybody kind of gets a different moment to enter the role of composer in the band. And we really kind of support this community of composers as well as performers. So they did classical music reimagined. They did theater music, like a vaudeville.
Hmm.
And I think that for us, it's a little more like entering performance art in terms of like considering what we do as theater.
Okay.
If you consider playing your violin as theater just as much as it is music, suddenly you need to play your violin differently.
Yeah.
And suddenly, the way you have to consider the way you sit and what angle it's at, and you have to consider what you wear differently, and you have to consider the way that you stand up and bow, and you have to consider, just like it all becomes part of a big ritual that you've created. So Sousa was thinking about this in some way. And he put popular music of the day as well.
That's so not like what classical like music does really. I mean, it's either a pops concert or it's not a pops concert. Like that's not all mixed in together in a traditional concert.
It's interesting. Yeah, it's like classical music is really like ghettoized all these different forms,
Hmm.
and they've kind of said oh well the pop series is over here,
Right.
and in some places they say our pop series makes money.
Hmm.
And then others, there's like the Masterwork series, and that's like that's the bread and butter, like the highest. I think musicians give that the most kind of credit.
Yes.
They're the most interested in
That's the
playing.
important stuff.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
there's like educational programming, and that's probably on the musician totem pole the least important.
Yeah.
But like for me, if every concert we're doing is not education, we're doing it wrong.
Mm.
And you can do that subtly. I can do that without speaking.
Oh my God. Okay, you know what? I really want to dive into that some more, but first I want to say, I want to ask you, how did you right at the beginning you said you when you graduated you didn't want to go the traditional conductor route. So when did you figure that out? Was that a scary moment where you're like, uh-oh, like I became a conductor, now I don't want to do that? What was that? How did you come to that realization?
Yeah, I mean, grad school is really hard. I went to University of Michigan. It's an amazing place. I learned a ton.
Hmm.
There's 7 orchestras on campus, and when I was there were 7 conductors in the program. So we each had an orchestra, which
Oh
is an
wow.
incredible thing. It's just like just that happened.
Right.
When I was a student is an amazing thing. So after that, I wasn't sure really exactly what path I wanted, and I thought that after seeing my friends kind of become assistant conductors, I thought that wasn't the path that I wanted
Hmm.
for whatever reason, either because I didn't really want to like sit around and take notes for people for a bunch of years,
Right.
and I yeah, and or, I guess maybe at that time even I realized that like my career was going to be about idea making and not about reproduction of things. And so much of classical music is like, did we get it right? Did we reproduce this faithfully? And if we think about like, did we reproduce this faithfully? It's like such an American thing. It's like the Ford factory. Like, did we reproduce this faithfully? And I don't think, Michelangelo was not saying like, did I reproduce this faithfully?
Exactly. That's so true.
Yeah.
It's so true. And when you're an assistant conductor, you often, like you just kind of described so well the compartmentalization of how an orchestra season is. Like you've got the masterworks, you've got the pops, you've got the education. And when you're an assistant, a lot of times you get saddled with just doing like the leftover stuff, which that's what they consider the education stuff, right?
For sure, yeah. And now, so most of my work now is guest conducting, and it's so interesting. My manager, will have these conversations, and he'll say, "Well, you've been offered this week of kids concerts," and I just did 10 concerts with the Louisville Orchestra, and they said, and they offered me these kids programs, and I was like, yes, let's do it.
Really?
Yeah, and he was like, well, but you should really think about it because career-wise, like, is it good for you to be doing like what assistants do? And I was like, look, we live in the United States. This is a post-Bernstein classical music world. If education is not our top priority, we have failed. Like as the people living in the shadow of Leonard Bernstein,
right.
for the entire history of our classical music culture in the United States. If education isn't the absolute number one thing, we screwed it up.
Right.
And he showed the way, and he created a generation of classical music listeners. And that's kind of our parents' generation, at least for me. And we haven't had that since.
Right.
I don't think so in the same way,
Definitely not.
Yeah. And certainly El Sistema in the US is like, there's something there about it. But it's different. It's so different. And so for me, it's the most important thing to be doing. And when I was saying all those things about the hierarchy of the way an orchestra works, I should say that's most orchestras work like that.
Yeah. And it's been true for the ones that I've played with at a certain level, and definitely the lowest on the totem pole as far as musicians. And I think there's something I want to try and connect. I don't know how I can do it, but I heard you say something about like that when you're performing with Wild Up and the education, if that's not in the concert, then you feel like you failed. It's almost like you're baking it in somehow. And it's there and they might not even know. And that's so creative and awesome. And the fact that Wild Up is everyone in the group is also contributing in a totally different way than just a musician. Not that there's anything wrong with a musician showing up to play their job, but like this is a lot different because they're contributing in a different way. So I think maybe the reason why the education is so low on the totem pole in these situations is because the educational show is thought up by someone in an office. And then they say, you guys do that thing, and you repeat it, like you said, like the Ford factory. You repeat it over and over and over and over and over.
Right.
Right.
It's so interesting. So there's a couple questions there. So I'll go for the first one. So one of the Wild Up concerts that we did first was called Ornithology.
Okay.
And I was really interested in Olivier Messiaen. And he has this piano concerto called Oiseaux Exotiques, which is exotic birds. And it's a remarkable piece. Our pianist, Richard Vallatudo, is an incredible pianist. And he learned the piece, and he was just out of school, and just blazingly brilliant performer. So, I knew that I wanted to put that piece at the center of a program. Mm-hmm. And we started to go a bunch of those places. We went to all the birdsong places. So we talked about Haydn's piece, The Hen. We talked about Brian Ferneyhough has a clarinet concerto that's about Icarus falling out of the sky. And it's just absolutely death-defying. So we talked about that piece. And then immediately, because we were talking about multi-genre, our clarinet player who plays saxophone as well was like, oh, let's do Charlie Parker.
Mm.
So we commissioned a bunch of new music people to kind of riff on Charlie Parker. So we had 5 pieces based on Charlie Parker. We had this Messiaen piano concerto. It's all bird songs. Exotic birds for him are American birds, so they were all American birds.
That's cool.
And then like I arranged the hen, Haydn's piece, and we also covered Andrew Bird because we wanted pop music, and I was like, puns are okay every so often. Also, interestingly, Andrew Bird, whether it's because of his name or not, he writes a lot about things that are like birds.
Oh.
Like there's like the mysterious production of eggs and things like that. It's one of the
I'm not
names.
familiar with it.
It's beautiful. He's a beautiful composer and violinist and
Okay.
singer. So that kind of concert with all these things next to one another, with that kind of concert, I didn't need to say we are interested in how all these things are similar and different, and that they all weirdly come from a similar place, kind of. But that if we build the program the right way, just in the way that people enter the space and encounter the pieces in order, it should elucidate something. It should be a thesis.
Right.
The order of the pieces and the way that they're constructed should be a thesis. And that's really tricky to do. And I think a lot of classical music, historically has been like, our thesis is we're going to do Tchaikovsky.
Yeah.
And it's going to be Tchaikovsky and then Tchaikovsky and then Tchaikovsky. And you're really going to like it and you're going to pay for it.
Yeah.
And I like composer portraits. I do a lot of them. So I really like that model. I think it's a little more interesting when the composer is alive.
Right. Oh, really?
Because they're there. If you're going to do a composer portrait, the idea that they should be there. And I think we don't call an all Tchaikovsky program a composer portrait, but like that's what it is.
Yeah.
We call it like summer festival or whatever, like artworks.
Right.
But so there's something about like putting all these pieces next to each other that come from different disciplines. Mm-hmm. That they each shine light on different parts of one another.
And then the audience has to kind of draw connections there themselves while they're listening,
Yeah. And then sometimes I didn't really talk about all the connections, but I said, in the concert, I speak in most of our concerts, and I spoke about our interest in these different pieces and why we're interested in them. And then I spoke at length before we did this Brian Ferneyhill piece because it's very thorny. And I wanted people to get why we love doing it, and that we love doing it because it's terrifying. And that's the only reason. And it's a piece about this particular piece is a piece about somebody falling out of the sky. But for the musicians, it's so difficult that it's so harrowing. It's like we're all in peril. And we never really get to do that. The stakes are never that high. And if we make a mistake, ultimately the stakes are incredibly low. That's particularly in this safe environment. This Wild Up's pretty safe. I'm not going to cut anybody because they crack a note.
Right.
I think we're way past that. I might cut somebody because they have a really bad attitude.
I definitely want to go into that a lot more. That's fascinating.
So just like thinking about education like that, and once I realized that was education, that's actually what we were engaged in, it cleared a lot of things up for me, in terms of our mission and in terms of why we exist. And I would say, to answer that question that I just said, I think we exist because all of us in the band, we all want to work on the future of this art form, and we want to make it welcoming and thoughtful and light, even humorous, and with open arms.
I love how you talk about your mission as being yours as a collective with the group, not just your own. It's not like this is what I've made and you guys are there doing that thing and this is my mission. Like you really talk about it like a collective, and you refer to your group as a band. I love that. So I don't, this is so great because you explained why you didn't want to go the traditional route, and it totally makes sense. I mean, anyone who's played in an orchestra has picked up on that traditional conductor route, and I've personally felt like, oh God, that must be such a hard plight. So I can see why you wouldn't go the traditional route, but starting your own ensemble now, that's not an easier route at all. I mean,
Yeah.
what led you to decide just to start your ensemble in the first place? Who says I'm going to do this? I mean, because it lots of people wish they did, and I personally have wished I did for a long time. I'm finally making that move, but but like to actually go for it.
Um,
What made you just go, I'm doing this?
yeah, it was a moment, I guess there's a certain level of awareness that I have now
Hmm.
as a 35-year-old that my 26-year-old version did not have at all. And had I known what I know now, I probably would have been a little more cautious.
Yeah.
Actually. And I'm very glad that I wasn't cautious.
Okay.
I got some great advice. My godmother is her name's Hope Chopik Schneider, and Hope is an arts planning strategist.
Cool
And so
job.
yeah, and it's really I'm really lucky that she's my godmother.
Yeah.
And she's been involved in making tons of great art happen, and with museums and symphony orchestras. And she was part of the 1984 Olympic Arts Council in Los Angeles that brought these incredible performers here from all over the world. So, um, so Hope basically said the most important thing is do not wait to be asked to dance,
Hmm.
and that was great advice. That was really good advice. Um, and I think I was ready to take that advice at that time. I was eager to hear that. Um, but it was really effective. And then, as I was making Wild Up, I said, so here's what I'm thinking of doing. How does it sound to you? Can you give me some feedback on my plan? And the plan was not great. It was like, I'm going to find people and make a concert. And I think we'll do some PR. I think we'll like make a video.
Yeah.
Um, and and that's not the greatest plan. Uh, but she said some big things that got me thinking about all these, particularly the language stuff. So I had a little bit of money. My great uncle had passed away, and he left me a little bit of money, and so I had a little bit of money. I think it was $8,000, and that's what we started with.
Okay.
And that was like website, video, and everybody's renting the space, lights, and everybody's fee for the first show. There were 28 of us, so it's not great fees. What Hope said though, she said, if you pay for this, you're setting up something where you will always be the boss, and it's you paying. It's your thing because you're paying for it, and you need to find a way to create a gift economy where everybody desires so much to be there, and they are so honored. Like, and I don't mean honored like they feel honored, but like they are given honor by the thing itself. Like they're given the organization and the concert experience and the rehearsal experience gives them like dividends, like it pays to them as they're doing it, right?
Okay.
And and I said this in one of the rehearsals. I said, look, we're all getting $200. I'm bankrolling this one because I have a little bit of money, but I'm going to find people to support this. And I don't mean donors, I mean like venues. That's what I thought I would find, which I did eventually. And we're all getting paid $200, but many of you work and you get paid $1,000 for the week,
Mm-hmm.
particularly if there are 7 rehearsals like this show. And so I know that I'm paying you 1/5 of your fee, and you are paying the other 4/5 of the fee by not getting it.
Mm-hmm.
So you are all paying more for this than I am paying you, and I'm aware of that. Also, I brought pizza. It was like good pizza. It was like really good. It was 2 booths. It was really good pizza. So and then I found a really cool space. So the space felt cool, and that gave back. And the audience was super close, and the lighting was good, and that felt cool. And then I have a friend who's a press agent, or he was at that time a journalist actually, and he said, you should probably tell people about this. And I was like, oh yeah, do you think people will be interested? And he said, they'll be interested. And then so he did a press release, and NPR came, and the LA Times came. And
to the first concert.
The first concert. And the LA Times did a preview of the first concert.
Wow.
But it was because of what pieces were put together. And I didn't know that at that time. Like, this is all in hindsight, I can codify and look at it. But it's because there were all these genres of music right next to each other. It's because of the space. It was in the Jensen Rec Center studio, and the thing that had just been there before was like a 4-day residency by the Dirty Projectors that they presented. And it's like it was not really a concert space, but since they were just there, it had this buzz.
Okay.
And I'd seen them there. And it's in this historic building on now what is the hippest block in Echo Park. And even though it's called the Rec Center, it's called the Rec Center because it used to be a bowling alley under an apartment building. And now it's just a bunch of studios. So it was this really interesting kind of alchemy of like the right space. And I had seen the space and kind of gone, that's it. And then the right space with the right music, and then people that were willing to do it.
Okay.
Yeah, and willing to kind of put themselves out there and know that they were paying more to do this than they were being paid to do it, given how much time they were committing.
Okay. And so you found these people. Were they your friends?
No, a couple of them.
Okay.
But really it was one to one. So I'm the graphic designer who has worked with Wild Up since the very beginning, Tracy Larson, who now does like tons of new music design. So she designs all Ted Hearn's scores. She designs all the industry's materials. So anyway, she's just like proliferated into all of new music. So Tracy, her best friend Lucy was dating a violinist, and so I met Lucy, and I met this violinist Andrew Thull, who's now been my close collaborator for 10 years.
Oh, wow.
And I said, I hear you're at Cal Arts, and there's a bunch of good people there. And I saw your quartet play the other week. That was awesome. Do you want to do this? And he was like, yeah, sounds great.
Okay. So you were making connections and meeting people and getting out there and going to other people's concerts and kind of scouting.
Yeah. Well, actually, he and I went to the Dirty Projectors residency together. And I was like, oh, this space is a new music space. Mm-hmm. I was like, it is a new music space. We should do, and then to knew it was actually kind of affordable. So kind of one by one. So I met a number of people through Andrew and Cal Arts. I had multiple friends from Michigan who said, oh, you should meet my friend Richard who plays piano, and he's going to Cal Arts. I had another friend who was going to Colburn, and he said, I'll just go to the string players at Colburn and I'll just ask them who wants to do this. And I had, my friend Ryan, who's now principal trumpet of LA Opera. Ryan just met all he knew. He's very social, and he went and met all these string players, and suddenly we had an ace string ensemble.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So when we needed a bigger string ensemble,
right.
So kind of one to one. I met everybody.
Cool. And you had mentioned like that it's important to you, people's attitudes and people's approaches, and the fact that a lot of the people in the group are also composers. Or you told me a really funny story on our other call about how somebody wrote out a bio to when they were interested in playing with your group. And so like you just kind of, it sounds like you kind of keep your eye out for a certain kind of personality. Yeah.
Well, I was talking to as I just did this program just last week with ICE in Omaha. So I was working on Missy Mazzoli's new opera called Proving Up at Opera Omaha as part of their first big festival, which is called the One Festival, like Omaha, Nebraska. One. And so International Contemporary Ensemble was in residence for this festival, and I was talking to Rebecca Heller, who's their artistic director, co-artistic director, and Rebecca, I saw her interact with some situation that could have gotten thorny, and she interacted with the other players with such joy and optimism and kind of like raise the roof feelings. Mm-hmm. And I went up to her and said, "You are so optimistic, and it seems really built in layer by layer to everything that ice is positive and optimistic." Mm-hmm. This is an ensemble that plays sometimes simultaneously on multiple continents and has 180 shows a year as a chamber music organization.
Oh, wow.
They're just crazy busy, you know? And I said, so am I reading that the right way? And Rebecca was like, yeah, look, we're all really smart people. We could be making a lot more money doing something else. There's only one reason to do this, and it's because it brings us joy. And so if someone is having a problem, they got to sort that out immediately.
Wow.
And it is up to all of us to harbor joy and to send it out of our body. That's it. That's the number one thing that we must do. And when that's not happening, that needs to be remedied immediately.
God, that's such a great message for musicians, because people get really bogged down, man. And it's like, you're just doing a thing that you're supposed to be enjoying. Like, that's why you started doing it in the first place, right?
And the whole thing is like, if we can make a living doing this and it's joyful, it's the greatest thing.
Yeah.
But if we're bogged down about like, how did my excerpt go, and I'm really worried about someone hearing me and they heard me crack that note and then mm-hmm. All of that, it's antithetical to the only reason why we would do this.
Right.
And and it just struck me that I've been thinking that for years. Mm-hmm. I really haven't, with Wild Up, codified like we must be joyous. What is that? Like
Forced joy.
The government said to me, "You must rejoice. You must rejoice." So no, but it's not. You know, it's not even forced optimism, but like that. Just that we would all harbor that and keep working on it. And certainly, I think that's part of Wild Up's culture as well.
Yeah.
Though I think that in Wild Up there are a lot of like really toothy people. Where it's very masculine. It's like a very like male, like competitive thing.
Within Wild Up, you mean?
In Wild Up.
Okay.
And Ice, interestingly, is like very, I would say, more feminine. Also, interestingly, they're like majority female and we're majority male.
Okay.
I think like that's interesting.
Yeah.
And so like as an example of being like, whoa, like feminine energy harbored like really intensely equals this beautiful joy that I'm seeing. Like and maybe I'm putting two and two together in the wrong way, but like it was a beautiful thing to witness that and to kind of anyway to see that. So the way that I think about it for Wild Up, and I've thought about it for a number of years, is similar. And where to start with this? Like, as much as I was picking people that really are great at their instrument, mm-hmm. I was picking people that got along with each other, and that had an interest in one another as people and as musicians. And so what that created is, because, or the first couple years we didn't play that many concerts, we became really good friends in the first 3 years. Mm. The first year there was one concert. The second year there was two concerts. The third year there was kind of 4 concerts in the first half, and then we got this residency at the Hammer Museum, and where we did 40 concerts in 6 months. So
that's going from like almost nothing to way too much to do.
We got barely paid for those.
Wow.
Because it was really interesting to do that. I mean, for all of us, we were just out of graduate school, and so we could really spend all of our time. Like one of our residency activities we suggested was creating a tent village in the courtyard at the museum and just actually moving in. And it was just actually for us that like they did not say yes to that. They vetoed that immediately. But we all said that because it's an hour drive. Mm-hmm. And so we were like, we're going to lose, there's 20 of us, kind of. So we're going to lose some thousands of person hours driving across town to get here.
Yeah.
If you could just live here 3 days a week and go to the gym to shower, that would be really great. So this is logistical for us as much as it is like, what does an orchestra look like? It looks like a bunch of, in Los Angeles, nomadic people with tents that set up over there. and
Right.
they the tents, and we thought it was a great idea. Anyway, it didn't go very far. But so because we became friends in those 3 years, because we weren't playing that many concerts, by the time we were really busy, we knew each other. We like best friends,
So
and
great.
with all of the good and bad things that come with that.
Yeah, I'm thinking so many things right now because I've been on my page. I've been kind of ranting a little bit about that's what I do best. About musicians going into music not knowing the whole story, like not
Yeah,
knowing what career they're going. They even sometimes say I don't know what I want to do, and you're going, well, there aren't that many choices. Did you? Last I
yeah,
checked, when you play violin, your choice is you're either a soloist or you play in some kind of ensemble. So
right.
your answer, I don't know, is like a really bad one. So you got to figure that out. But but then there's this whole other part that they don't know about, which is that once you do get into an orchestra, like you're the newbie, you're like you just been adopted by a dysfunctional family that's been existing for 40 years.
Yeah,
Like
and there's like subtle hazing.
yes, and
You
there's
know, it's very subtle, but it's but there's
yeah.
this.
Yeah, and you might sit next to someone who hates their life, and then, like you don't know what's
That's
going to
your stand
happen.
partner.
Right? Yeah,
That's your stand
exactly.
partner for 20 years. Even
Exactly.
it's like having a cellmate.
It, it is.
It's
And
not,
so like what you're describing with Wild Up, I almost feel like there should be some kind of program, like some rite of passage program where like, you know, 20 people and a conductor do that. They like make a tent, they make a campground outside of a museum or something.
right?
Like that's a great idea.
That's it.
I mean, because you have to, I mean, and I think like the epitome of a real like an orchestra job would be if people got to choose their bandmates. Like you don't get to,
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
doing that, and you did that right now. So I think what do you think is, knowing what you know now about Wild Up and how you've, well, it's sort of like in hindsight, you've kind of vetted the people there because you didn't really vet them necessarily, but you grew together, it sounds like, and you
Yeah.
created a vibe and an energy that you uphold in your group. And someone either fits in or they don't, and it's pretty obvious. So, like, how would you say that going forward in the future of classical music, that could be a thing?
Mm.
Or,
Well,
I mean, is it possible? Because it sounds like
need to.
utopian to me, but I don't know
Yeah,
if,
I think we would need to consider the makeup of our hiring choices in a
yeah.
totally different way. Um, you know, there are some great things that have come from the way that we hire people
Hmm.
in classical music. I mean, orchestras, in one decade became, much more female, for example,
Yeah.
because of doing blind auditions.
Right.
So like that's incredible. Uh, at the same time, uh, a blind audition, you don't get to know anybody for who they are,
Hmm.
and the idea that like playing notes is the whole job.
Hmm.
Playing notes and rhythms correctly, that is not the job.
Right.
The job is being a colleague, uh, and and the job is kind of being a good person.
Right.
And I think that when we ask that question, things are tricky because it would be easy to, over 50 years, we're just like in such a strange moment in our world history, that like taking any kind of um, system of blind equality, and removing it seems like a problem to me
Yeah.
now, whereas
Yeah.
5 years ago it did not.
Right.
And I thought, let's take away the blinds, let's audition as many people as possible, and let's pick the people that are the best, cross-sectioned with the best and also the kindest.
Hmm.
That's the people. Best,
Yeah.
kind, most adventuresome. That's it.
Right.
Harboring this kind of thoughtfulness about the way that we have people come together to make music
Hmm.
and create communities. This type of thoughtfulness is what will change our field.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's anything else, because I think once we start asking these questions about how we make an ensemble, we're going to start to get other answers. Like, why are we only playing the music of dead white dudes?
Right.
Like, and okay, so they sell more tickets, but I have a question. So is the music, I love that Kendrick Lamar just won the Pulitzer. I love it. I had coffee with my buddy Ted yesterday, who was one of the finalists. And you know, Ted, a lot of Ted's inspiration in his music is Kendrick.
Wow.
I mean, for years. And so it's like for Ted to like quote lose the Pulitzer to Kendrick is a beautiful thing for Ted. He's like, yeah, my hero is the winner.
That's cool.
And I'm in the category, my hero. You know, it's like it's beautiful. What it does to classical music, though, is consider like, and for me, it makes us consider what is great music.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're allowed to consider all music as great music, I think it heightens classical music.
Yeah.
Because it brings us into the sphere of all music.
Right.
And I love that, as opposed to this thing where we're like old people's music.
Yeah.
And I love that. It means we have to compete with some things that are more expensive than the thing that we are.
Mm-hmm.
Like Ted's album that was in that finalist thing. Kendrick's album was much more expensive for certain to make. Ted's album was probably a few dozen $1,000s, and I would say Kendrick's is much more than that by some multiple of tens.
Wow.
You know, and so like we're competing with something that has a lot more money than we do,
mm-hmm.
right? Which is interesting, and it's more popular than we are, which is interesting. But I think that it in a way it so elevates what we're doing to bring it into public consciousness in a different way, and like I love that. And anyway, so so I think considering the way that we hire people, it's going to make us consider other things.
Yeah.
You know, why are the concert halls set up the way they are? Why do we have all these rules about when you can clap and not clap?
Right.
Are those just to dissuade poor people from coming?
Right.
If you don't know when to clap, you're an idiot. You know, like I remember, like that's a joke, by the way. My face.
My answer is always, don't be the first one, and you're fine, right? Just
wait, and then everyone waits. Like, am I supposed to go? You
right.
know? Oh, so upsetting.
I know.
But you know, I was at a concert with the LA Phil. David Robertson conducted,
mm-hmm.
and I think it was Dvorak 8, an incredible first movement.
Yeah.
You know, and this is written kind of at a time when there's a question about it, but there was a moment in history when the performance practice changed from you're supposed to clap after the first movement to you're not supposed to clap.
So there was a time that you were supposed to clap after the first movement.
That you were supposed to.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was designed. It's designed for you to clap, and I think it's approximately it's Wagner, so it's like 1885, 1888.
Okay.
And Wagner started all this stuff. Thanks, Eric Wagner.
Wagner was like, no, we shall not clap after first movement.
So actually what he said apparently was, we will not clap for the diva when she enters the stage.
Okay.
And then it proliferated through. Most powerful person, you know, it's like
yeah.
Barack Obama saying, like, we will not do this. You know, so I won't do that anymore. You know, not
right.
that I was anyway, but probably. Or the Pope, you know, I think it's like he had that kind of
yeah. But that would explain why so many first movements end, and you're like, yeah,
yeah, because they're designed to do that.
Yeah,
it's like Williams. It's like the spaceship takes off, and we're like, go get them, you know.
Yeah,
it's designed for us to feel an uplifted, jump out of our seats feeling.
Yeah,
because that's what you're supposed to do. Then we got history wrong, and we stuck with it.
Mm.
That's so stupid.
Yeah.
You know, I almost thought of going to concerts and just religiously clapping it all after all the first movements as loud as possible to try to change it. But I thought maybe it's better to, like, you know, talk about it first.
Yeah.
You know? But
I don't know. Yeah, that would be an embarrassing way to try and make a change, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So David Robertson, LA Phil. So they're playing Dvorak. First movement ends, and many people, I would say a few dozen people, just go nuts.
Uh-huh.
They're overjoyed.
Yeah.
and a few of them leap out of their seats, and more than I've ever seen at any concert in a first movement.
Wow.
It was a great first movement. They stop. Somebody shushes them. It stops. He gets off the podium, Robertson. He turns around and he says, in his just speaking voice, but very loudly, he says, "The composer would be very upset had you not clapped."
Oh.
And then standing ovation, the whole concert hall. Boom! They're all ready to do it. Everybody in the hall. All they needed was, I just want to tell you, the actual performance practice, they wanted you to clap.
It's all they needed was a go-ahead. Wow.
The idea that we can respond, one of the things about classical music that's really challenging is that the audience is not welcome to respond.
Mm-hmm. It keeps people from going. They're like, eh.
Yeah. If I'm going to an art museum and I see something beautiful, I can stand in front of it for an hour.
Right.
Response. I can bring my friend over and be like, "Look at that blue. Isn't that like the craziest thing you've ever seen in your entire life, that color blue?"
Yeah. Or
like, "Look at this brushstroke. See how thick that is? That is ridiculous."
Right.
Like, that's wow.
Yeah.
I can do that. And that's why I love that experience, is because not only do I share it with myself and my own thoughts, but I'm sharing it with somebody else. And we can do it in real time right next to the piece of work.
Right.
And in our field, the only way we do that is to go get coffee afterwards and be like, "I liked this, I didn't like this, I did like this, I didn't like this. This is too noisy, this is too quiet, this is the best, this was..."
Yeah, you can't do it in real time. You have to wait till afterwards.
You have to wait. And our culture is not designed for that. And those pieces weren't designed for that.
Yeah.
In Berlioz's memoir, he says, "I normally would have eaten dinner during the concert as we do. Let's just process that. But for this concert, I was so upset that I opened my orange very loudly and offered it to all the people next to me as loud as I could."
So wait, he had lunch? He had like a packed up dinner?
So apparently everybody would go to the symphony and eat dinner in the hall.
Oh.
They'd bring, like the Hollywood Bowl, they would go like outdoor thing, but they would do it indoors. And they would all be sharing food.
That's so cool.
It's a different
bring
thing.
this back. Bring it all back.
And it's like, it would be a 4-hour concert. Like Beethoven did these concerts that he premiered. What is this famous concert where it was like,
Beethoven 9 and Mrs. Solemnis or something?
It was like, it was
Beethoven, all of it. Yeah.
This huge program. It's just a gargantuan program. And he improvises at the piano for 2 hours ahead of time,
Yeah, you got to bring lunch.
You know.
I know, that's like a Wagner opera. People are picnicking in the lobby in between.
But that's the thing, is that they were picnicking in the theater.
Yeah.
We've gone so far away from it. Brahms. There's this Brahms. So this one performance, I didn't like it very much, and I detest Mozart or whatever. I forget what he's saying. So I decided that I have this couch in my booth in my box, and I would sleep all the way through. I'd take a nap. It was better than listening. So there's just, it's a different thing. It's like a different. They were doing so. They were more engaged with around the work than we are with the work. They were allowed to interact with it in many, many more ways, and we are the most conservative version of what classical music could have been.
Right, isn't it? That's so crazy, and I think that's why so many musicians struggle. Like, what will make it cool again? Do we need to go to a bar and play? Do we need to,
You need to change the rules. You need to bring a lot of people in that look different from one another.
Yeah.
You need to play music from all over the world. You need to present all these different types of music in the same arena.
Yeah, because the only reason Beethoven played all Beethoven is because that was what was current right then and there. I mean, they were playing what's current. They weren't playing stuff from 200 years ago.
Exactly. And it's because he was there.
Yeah.
It's like, we have this. I mean, this exists. There are people, there are classical musicians in the world where if you did, like I would go see 4 hours of Hervé Parrot. For sure. I would go and just be like, this is the most beautiful spiritual thing I've ever been to. I would certainly do that. I think the amount of people that have heard Hervé Parrot's music are many millions, tens of millions of people.
I don't even know who that is.
Yeah, but the amount of them that know who that is not that many. In Europe, it's certainly more. He's a wonderful, wonderful composer. Parrot is P-A-R-T, with parrot, the A has a umlaut.
Okay.
So incredible composer, and a modern day mystic. And he's it's and his music has been in countless films.
He's not the one. I'm thinking, I don't know if it's the same person, but there's someone in Europe who wrote a symphony where you're supposed to sleep, and the symphony takes like 8 hours.
So that's a different composer, Max Richter.
Okay.
And it's a chamber piece. I think it's 8 musicians. And they just did it at South by Southwest, actually.
They did?
It's some friends of mine. Yeah, the group called Acme plays it. American Contemporary Music.
Did they trade out? Did they filter in? Do they take breaks or?
I haven't seen it. I listened to the recording. It's very beautiful.
Did you sleep while you listened?
I did not. No, I just put it on and then went about my day. But Max Richter's very, very beautiful. I think there's all these people, and I'm so glad that some composers like Max Richter are able to be in the world of film music and have a voice in that world, but also be in the classical music world.
Yeah. It sounds like there's so much possible, and there's people like you who are making waves just by creating and doing. And I hope that, and this is why, this is exactly why I wanted to have a podcast like this, because I want more people to know gradually, as my podcast gets more and more discovered, that people can hear about people like you who are doing stuff that's so incredibly cool that they get inspired enough to do it themselves, So, and that's what I'm trying to do. I'm going to form an ensemble, and one of the reasons why I called you in the first place was because somebody had told me. I'm going to switch gears and get a little practical here for a second.
That's great.
I had Sam Hyken on from New Deco Ensemble, and we were talking about the for-profit, non-profit kind of dilemma thing. And he had mentioned that he thought you were for-profit with Wild Up, and then I was like, well, I got to get to the bottom of this so I can know for myself. So that's what I called you. And so can you go into that a little bit? Because I know you have a really good philosophy about this.
Sure. Well, so some of the advice I got early on was, if you're an ensemble, seek to be presented as early as possible. And what that means is you're relying on relationships with known presenting partners, like CAP at UCLA, or like BAM in Brooklyn. These are some of the biggest in the country.
Okay.
Or UMS, the University Musical Society at the University of Michigan. These big institutions that have a number of different music groups hosted and that be performing in their venue every year. And the way that presenting model works is that you take your ensemble to this place, and then you get a fee from that institution, regardless of your ticket sales.
Okay.
So it's actually your job and their job to sell tickets.
Oh, okay.
They take on that responsibility and give you a flat fee.
Okay.
Instead of, for example, a door split or presenting what's called self-presenting, which is having, like what I did for the first show of Wild Up, which was like, I rent a venue, I sell tickets, we have a concert, and we try to break even.
Exactly.
But, we spent $8,000 and made $2,000.
Yeah.
Which was a huge success. And that was it was like
that you made something is a huge success.
Totally. And
yeah.
So early on, I was looking for partners to present our work, and I found early on the Armory Center for the Arts in Pasadena, California, and they said, "Look, we won't pay you, but you can sell tickets, and we'll let you have this space basically for free."
Okay.
And that was great. That was an amazing deal for us.
Yeah.
Because that's saving $1,000 a show.
Right.
It's huge savings. And when you're dealing with $5,000, like taking in revenue of $2,000 to $5,000, saving $1,000 is critical.
Right.
So that was the first one. Then we had a venue in Venice, California, called Beyond Baroque, and we did a door split with them. But it was very, which is even better, because if the tickets are a little bit more expensive, we do more shows. They don't charge us anything. It's a very intimate space. And I think, we did 4 shows there, and we did we probably sold 250 tickets to each show. We did it a couple times, and 200 tickets to each show, and that wasn't a fee, but it kind of was towards a fee. And then we went to the Hammer Museum, and that was a fee. Like, here's a big fee, do all these concerts.
Okay.
And kind of we started this model of being presented. So that was our goal early on. And the way that I had thought about it, I had a friend who tours in rock bands, and he basically said, the model, right, is like there's 4 dudes, and they're in a van, and they have a tour manager and a band manager, and so that's 6 people, and you need $600,000 to make them all make $100,000 a year. What's funny is the story is like probably from like 1970. $100,000 is still like a thing that we want to make.
Right.
Okay, but sorry, we'll just pause on that. So you need 6,000 fans who are devoted to your cause enough to each give you $100 a year, and then you have $600,000. And I love that idea that if people are invested enough in the thing, they will give you a ticket and like, an expensive ticket, like $50 for a ticket or 2 tickets. And then they'll also give you they'll buy a t-shirt, and then suddenly you've hit $100, and you're, each of the people in the band can survive and have a mortgage and,
right.
whatever.
And you have to do that, those 6,000 people or a new set of 6,000 people, but it has to be every year, 6,000.
Every year, those 6,000, it has to be $100 a year. I'm trying to think of the things that I would pay for every year, $100 or more, and they exist. Like if Bjork was in LA every year, I would pay $100 or more to see Bjork every year. There are a few other things that the things that I love enough to do that. Certainly, I go to the orchestra enough when I'm not working, and I'm giving the orchestra more than that.
Right. But there's more than 6 people there.
Many more than 6 people.
So
also,
yeah.
They're kind of banking on my ticket, but they're kind of not in a way. That's a different model. So anyway, so while that became an ensemble early on, that was presented by a number of different venues, and that's been our model since the beginning. And what's that? It's really let me move away from what a lot of ensembles like us have done, which is just work on individual donations. And it let us wait to become a 501c3, a nonprofit. It let us wait until year 6. And so in year 5, we worked on it all year. And because we'd had 5 years of making work and being documented in a number of good reviews and different sources, and some albums we'd already made, we had this kind of body of work before we incorporated to be a 501c3. And I think that was a really good choice, because then, in a way, the board kind of found us.
Okay.
And people kind of said, hey, you're making this thing. That's incredible. Why can I not? So we were fiscally sponsored by another group, which means someone received money from us, and then it was a tax deduction, and they took 10% out and gave us 90%. And someone said, I don't want to give you a lot of money because 10% of it will go to this other company, and I don't want that.
Oh.
Can you please become a 501c3? And when someone's saying that to you, that's such a clear. It's so clear. It's like, oh, well, yeah, okay. I mean, but also, do you want to be on the board? There's this thing. So really, I found the board members over years in making relationships with a number of people. And it was a very kind of powerful, experience to have all of these supporters come out of the woodwork and want to become our boss.
Yeah.
It's really, you're hiring your own boss. That's when you're forming a board.
Right.
And it's beautiful. And I think that people that, that are civically minded and want to guide the way a community moves, and are in the place in their life where they have time to do that. Whether it be, we have a few board members that are younger, whether it be someone older or someone younger. And so because we waited and we were presented by all these institutions, we didn't need to worry about raising money as much the first few years. And so for that reason, we had this late starting board. We formed a few years ago into 501c3, and then pretty soon after, I was looking for management for us, and we signed with David Lieberman Artists. He's one of the only West Coast management firms. They're in Newport Beach. And David Lieberman Artists, they manage a number of theater groups, a number of dance groups, and then some music groups. And the music groups are Eighth Blackbird and Kronos Quartet and Band All Stars and us. And now they were also adding LA Master Chorale has one piece they tour with them. So we're in great company, and just they've been amazing. David, there's three managers there: David, Andrew, and Alan, and they're remarkable. And they've really changed what we do, because now we can build shows here and we can tour those shows. And it's a beautiful thing to like be working on something for years and then get to bring it to people that have never seen us. And it's a beautiful thing to see those rooms change in the way that the rooms in LA changed the first time we did shows.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I bet.
So, yeah, and then add to that, a lot of what we do now is we're touring, and then we also have a residency at an educational institution, and we're teaching young musicians about this stuff.
That is what my next question was going to be. Like, what advice would you give to young musicians now? Is that what you do when you're doing the educational component at the residencies?
Some it depends. I think pretty often what I've noticed is it's the same thing I noticed when I went in school. In undergrad, I had no idea what I wanted to do, and I was pretty aimless. Mm-hmm. And in grad school, I had already picked what I wanted to do, and I was coming in just like teeth bared and just on fire, ready to do the thing. And it's interesting to see that, and how many young people kind of don't have a plan. Yeah. And I feel like the only reason to do this is that you love it enough that you're like an eagle falling out of the sky toward one point. Mm-hmm. Yes. And if you haven't found that, I would say search for that before anything else. Like,
absolutely. You just kind of, you summarized what I was ranting about yesterday on my post, which was basically like, if you aren't super hungry for this thing, then take some time and figure out if you are first before you dive in, because you have to be like freaking crazy about it. I really think, Yeah. Like, so I remember my teacher, I studied with Dale Clevenger, and he'd look at me over his glasses. Are you hungry? I can tell that you are hungry. Like, that's all he wanted to know, is if you were hungry, because it's hard. Yeah.
It's like I wouldn't want to tell anybody not to do this work that we're doing.
Right.
But at the same time, I feel like it's very important that you feel compelled to do the thing that you're doing every day.
Yes, definitely.
And what I realized for me is, like, I'm an administrator. That's my job right now. Mm-hmm. But I'm actually, that's the job that I'm the least interested in. And I'm absolutely enthralled with joy when I'm conducting music. I could not, and I always forget, because for me, I just do so much administrative work that it'll be like, 2 weeks of no conducting, and then 10 hours a day for 10 days. Those all be like working on projects simultaneously or whatever, or an opera or whatever it is. And all I'm doing, I get it. Like, when I was just in this opera festival in Omaha, I was talking about, and it's the kind of festival where like 50 of my friends flew in from all over the country. And so just the amount of conversations that happen surrounding the work, like I would wake up and text my friend James, who's the director, and say, "Hey, I'm going to the coffee shop," and he'd be like, "Beat you." And then I'd arrive at the coffee shop, and there's 6 people there, and 3 of them are working on one project, and the other 3 are talking about how the rehearsal went the last night. And then we start rapping about, like, how are we going to solve that thing? Like, I don't know, there's a flashback, and the flashback doesn't work. Is it lighting? How do we solve it? And we're working on the show at 8 a.m. before our 10 a.m. rehearsal. And then we're also all writing emails about the shows we're doing in a year. To be like, cool. We're like flipping back and forth. And I was like, I'm in my place of joy. It is this. And then I go into rehearsal, and, opera rehearsals are really slow for the conductor, actually. You do a lot of sitting and listening. But because my colleague, James Dara, who's an amazing director, but we've worked together now for 5 years. And I can, he can conduct sometimes, and I can direct sometimes. say, what if it was just a little bit slower? Because we need more time right here. And I'm like, oh, I can build that. Let me try it.
So cool. So much creation going on.
And
So much creativity.
Yeah, and I realized like that's my place.
Uh-huh.
And me responding to emails, I'm like a 1 out of 10. and I know that. And I know what it takes to get better, and I know like how to use my bandwidth, because it's not very much bandwidth. Because I detest it. It makes me livid. But when I'm conducting, it makes me full of joy. And I know there's only one way to get to the conducting, which is to do that bandwidth of editing.
Right.
So
would the advice be that, what's the advice piece there with what, for musicians? Do they need to embrace, maybe embrace some of the other stuff that goes with creating a career that you love? It's not just going to be only the thing that you love all the time, right?
For sure. I mean, I kind of cut my teeth as an administrator, actually.
Okay.
And that's where I have most of my experience at the beginning.
Oh.
And because I did that, I didn't know that I'd be doing that.
Mm-hmm.
I loved learning how to do it. Now I realize I like doing it less than I like actually conducting. But with being an administrator, this is just like a case study. With being an administrator, I get to program.
Mm-hmm.
And so the idea that like, because I'm doing chamber music sometimes, and because I'm conducting a group that I run, I get to like help pick what we make.
Yeah.
And that's beautiful. And so one has to come with the other. So I think you're exactly right.
Yeah.
Embrace the things that you don't necessarily love. But, performance wise, I think it's not, it's a little different. Performance wise, I would just say, seek to learn as many styles as many styles of music as possible.
Okay.
And seek to find the styles of music that move you, and the formats in which those are made that move you. If you love playing a quartet more than anything else, you should be in a quartet. You should not be in an orchestra.
Mm-hmm.
And and if you love being a soloist, good luck. If you make it, it's awesome. You make some money.
Yeah.
And I think it's really competitive. I have to tell you that for all those that are listening that want to be soloists or conductors, it's super lonesome.
Mm.
Travel for a living, and you are alone.
Right.
And it is you have to be like, I'm an intense extrovert, but I've realized I have to like harbor the space for being alone and wanting to be alone and having that time be powerful for me, because when I'm traveling, which is a majority of my year, I am alone. And then add to that, if you want a partner or family,
yep,
you're then alone and you've left people behind, and they're mad at you.
And they're mad at you. Exactly. I know. And this is the thing, that another piece that people don't think about is the lifestyle part. It's like you can say, I want to be that, I want to do that, but you gotta fill in that rest of that pie, like the sliver is the work you're doing, but what about the lifestyle? I was talking to a class last week, and one of the guys, I asked people in the class, like, who would they design their ideal career after? If like this career and this career could have a baby, and then that was your career, what would that look like? And they struggled with that question. And then one guy said, maybe my teacher, because he does the thing I want to do. And I said, what's his lifestyle like? He goes, I don't know anything about his lifestyle. And you got to find out what the lifestyle is like. See if that works for you. You know what I mean? So, totally. And for you, like you said, you're an extrovert. Obviously, the work outweighs that you have to spend so much time alone because you love it so much.
Yeah. And I've spent all this time alone, but like I get to meet new people, mm-hmm. and I get to travel around the world, and that makes me feel great.
Yeah.
But I have to do that basically without a partner.
Right.
Because my partner has a 9-to-5. So, and I mean, it's more like a 7:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m., if I'm being honest. Because she's like really awesome and really good at her job, but has a lot of responsibility.
That's tough. That's really tough.
Yeah, so it's tough. And we don't really think of music in that way, And I think music is really interesting. It's pretty cushy for a long time. If you're in the track, the school protects you,
Oh yeah.
and graduate school protects you.
I'm doing the work because I was in the practice room for 3 hours or 4 hours or
Yeah,
whatever, you know.
yeah. And I
Yeah.
mean, look, there was a time when for 4 hours a day, I remember people must have thought I was crazy. I would go to the dance school, where I was an undergrad in Long Beach, California, and I would go to the dance department and I would stand in front of a mirror because I just had a big conversation with my friend Sam Shapiro, who's this amazing dancer and he's also a farmer. And Sam, he lives in he lives in Black Mountain. He lives in was it like Asheville?
Asheville. Oh yeah, okay. That's
So
really
Sam, he was saying, I realized this. Musicians, they never work with mirrors. You must have a totally different awareness of your body than I have. Like, I can't rehearse in a room without mirrors covering it.
Wow.
So I keep trying to check if I look the right way, but I have to just trust I do. Well, that just totally blew my mind in 10 ways. But anyway, so I would find the room with a mirror, and I just watched the way the beat pattern look. I was just like, this is how it goes. Okay, this hand's going to do 5. Okay, and then this hand's going to do 5. Okay. And I just watched the pattern happen. I would say, it looks the way that I want it to look. And then I would say, okay, well, I'll do this excerpt of Appalachian Spring from memory, just watching the mirror. And I would I would just do this, and people must have thought I was totally crazy. But for years, I actually practiced the physical job, and then of course, score study is our main job. And then after score study is the practice of how you engage psychologically in rehearsal, and that's its own whole learning. But you can only do that one, unfortunately, in rehearsal.
Right.
There's all these levels of practice. And so, of course, like I would say, of course, practice, but really figure out what ends your practice is going to.
Yeah. And talk to other people from other genres. Now not genres, but other disciplines. That's incredible. That's a great insight, So who in the classical world is inspiring you right now?
That's a great question. So Claire Chase is a friend of mine. She's absolutely remarkable. What she did in creating Ice, and in kind of being an ambassador for all music, and an ambassador for the way musicians should be with one another. She's literally created a culture in which an organization is drenched in joy and optimism. And just to watch that happen, what that's going to do for our field as all those people proliferate into the field and begin teaching and, whatever, it will do a lot for our field. There are a number of people making new music that I like, composers that I love. I just did a piece with Missy Mazzoli at Opera Omaha, and it's a piece called Proving Up. It's traveling to New York in September. Really excited about Missy. And my friend Ted Hearn, with whom I hang out very often, Ted's the kind of person where if a piece of his hasn't shaken you and changed your opinion about what an instrument is capable of, and then conceptually also challenged, like, oh, I never thought I would see a piece about fill in the blank.
Right.
And wow, I feel really uncomfortable with that. It's usually the way I feel sometimes. And that it's usually about politics. It's about gender, about race. So I would say that, there's some of my favorite people. Let me keep thinking here. I just did a project also with James Dara, this director I mentioned. James's work is profoundly beautiful.
I just feel like you're giving me a list of people I need to interview on this podcast.
You should do that, yeah.
Right? Like, we got to talk about that. So, because all these people sound incredible. I want to hear their stories too.
Yeah. Well, you should hear them.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being on this podcast today, Christopher. I really appreciate it. I've had such a great conversation with you. I feel so lucky that I get to have this conversation today. It's so great.
Well, and the same thing, because I think these things, but this is not the way my brain normally works. My brain does normal things like, should I eat some yogurt this morning? Like it says, but to have a conversation like this, yeah, I feel great too. So thank you so much for asking me to.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Well, have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon.
That sounds great.
Okay.
Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.